Hello everyone, my name is Marion with DTM Real Talk Channel. It's the channel that you can tune into, have the ability to listen to the thoughts of others about topics all over the world that touch every one of our lives. Everybody goes through basically the same thing. There is nothing new under the sun. So if you're going through, someone else has already been there. Maybe you can find hope. Maybe it's a pathway that can set you on the right road just by tuning in. So DTM Real Talk, just keeping it real. And if you like it, like us at the bottom, subscribe, and let us know just how we helped you. Just keeping it real. Nothing but love. Good evening, good morning, wherever you are. This is DTM Real Talk, and we are back. I know y'all on the edge of y'all seat want to hear the rest of Tim's story. Okay, he talked about, let me see, I'm so ready to hear the end part. But for those of you that missed it last week, Tim, say hi to the good folks.
Hey, people, how y'all doing today? I hope you're doing great.
Yes. So everybody is dying to hear this story. I mean, living to hear this story, right? We ain't using dying, but anyway. He talked about how he was 2 years old and the trauma that he experienced from his father that created so much fear in his life as a 2-year-old that he can remember. That was amazing that he can remember that. And the two traumatizing events that he experienced from his father coming home from the military, who he did not know and did not have a relationship at that time. How that the anger of his voice scared the living daylights out of him, how he handled him because he sucked his thumb as a child for his security blanket to protect him from the fear that he was feeling toward his father. And how he left home at an early age. Am I on the right track? Do I remember pretty good?
No, you're right.
He left home at an early age and went to, what was it, South Carolina or North Carolina?
South Carolina, Mount Pleasant.
Yes. And how a man of God took him in and he fell in love and got married. And then he returned home, y'all, to meet that same father that created that fear in him at 2, and now he's 20-something. So we want to hear what happened and how he dealt with that fear. How did he come face to face with the fact that this is the reason he can share the story with you guys today, that trauma from long years ago of some kind, some form, some way, some fashion, some kind of trauma can cause severe depression in an individual today. So Tim, it's your time. Take it out. Wait.
Yeah,
okay.
As we spoke on last week, now I'm married. I'm 18. My wife is several years older than me. She's 23. And the interesting part is she's a Southern girl and just as sweet can be. And I don't think I could have did any better. But the problem was, because I was, raised around mature people in church, I emulated what the other men that I went to church with, how they acted. So I acted mature. I'm 16, but I'm acting like I'm 25. So I think that's a reason why a beautiful woman like my first wife probably liked me. And so I come home, got a great job, making close to 70 grand a year. And feeling pretty good, got my, my first child, and I'm thinking everything's good. And so now, again, I'm trying to deal with my father. But then I found out that my father had an issue with my job. Now I'm making twice as much money that he's making. Now I'm not thinking negatively, although I'm used to him now because he raised me. We never starved or anything like that. And yes, I did go through this trauma, but I'm used to dealing with him now. And that was just to be expected on how he was. But now I thought this was something was going to change. And so there were things that I could do financially, and I didn't have any credit. I just was making a lot of money, and I went to my father. My father helped his oldest child, not with my mother, helped her get established. My father's always had excellent credit. In the 800s, can get anything he wanted. I knew it because we had the same name. And when I would try to go buy something, and because we lived on the same street, these people are looking at me like, look at the little young boy, he's trying to steal his father's job. And I would say, no, it's my job. This is my job. Where in June, I already made over 34 and close to 35 grand in June of the current year. So I was on track to make like $70,000 by the end of the year. And they were like, no. And so I knew, that was going to create a problem. And so there are some things I had to go by my nickname. And I've had my nickname, what you call me now, that's my legal name for the past 40 years, because I had to make a separation between my birth name and my nickname because I was the fourth, my father was the third, and it was creating too much of a problem.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, so that's settled. And so I'm married. I can't remember exactly what happened, but no, I did allude to it. So because my mother and my wife were like best friends, that created a problem for me. Because everything that went on in our house, she would go tell my mother. And then that I would revert back to being a little kid, because now my mother is jumping on me about whatever it is. And it wasn't nothing bad, So my father was abusive to my mother.
Okay.
And I saw that. And that was part of the trauma of when he would put his hands on her, I would try to fight him. He would beat me up. I would run away. And I'm like 11 years old when this was going on. But that's part of the ongoing trauma up until I got grown and married. Now that I'm grown and married, and my brothers my brother right under me is grown. My father had to change his behavior.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, because now it's like, no, we ain't having it. And I'm like, I ain't having it. And my brother, who went through the trauma with me, he wasn't having it. And my younger teenage brother, he wasn't having it.
Right.
And so he did change his behavior.
I'm sure.
But in general, his behavior didn't change towards me, as far as wanting to help me, to become established. And because I did come to him, and I wanted to buy property, I had enough money, I could qualify. I didn't have the credit. He did. When I came to him and I asked him, he just declined, which is his right. He said no. But it was because he was holding it against me, because I ran away at 15 to Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, after being shot. I didn't want to live in LA no more. I was afraid. And that was part of just the ongoing trauma that I was experiencing under his roof, and having to get back and forth to school in LA and deal with all the gangs in LA. And I was never a gang member, but I had to fight them guys just to get to school and to get home. And so when I got shot at 15, that was it. I didn't want to be there anymore, and so I ran away. And he never forgave me for doing that. So he didn't help. He didn't want to help me, and so basically I was on my own. And then he did things that basically really sabotaged me, because now I'm working and I'm saving money, but I still don't have no credit. But I know I need a car.
Right.
I need to get a car. And so, but now all of a sudden, because I think I probably had about $4,000 or $5,000 saved up. Now he says, okay, I'll co-sign you a car. I'm like, okay. So we went to the dealership, but long story short, he never co-signed me a car. What he did was he went to his credit union and he bought the car.
Right.
And so when the car started having trouble a few years down the road, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna trade this car in because after 2 years, my credit should be established. I still don't have any credit. And then I find out what he did. He didn't co-sign the loan. He just put me on the registration and I didn't have any credit. And I felt betrayed. And so I didn't do anything with the car. I'm like, okay, because it's like, you're not helping me. You're not helping me. And then the situation between my mom and my wife, that was a lot of pressure on a young person, who acted mature, who wasn't really mature, who's, been through a lot. That put a lot of pressure on my marriage. And then we ended up separating, and my family took my wife's side. They didn't do anything to try to, make it better. And I was so despondent as a result of what was going on, and everything kind of like came to a head at that point. I tried to commit suicide.
Right. So you had traumatic event after traumatic event starting at 82 that was never really dealt with. Yeah.
That never was dealt with. Now I'm grown thinking, okay, things are going to change. And so, so now we get to this point to where you feel like you don't have no other options. You feel like your life is over.
Yeah.
And nothing's going to get better. And when you make the decision, you've been going through severe depression your whole life. And now the one good thing that you have is now that's falling apart.
Right.
Your marriage is falling apart. And then you decide, I don't want to be here anymore. And so at the point to where you do the act of ending your life, and it could be in different forms, that's a mental process that cannot be ignored. And the reason why I say that, because that was traumatic. I took a big bottle of Tylenol, and I took the whole bottle, and I started walking down the street. And when the aspirins kicked in, I collapsed in the middle of the street. And because I didn't look like I was a drug addict, like I was a homeless person, I didn't look. Whoever it was who came to my aid, they didn't even have cell phones back then.
Right.
They went to the phone booth and they dialed EMS, and they came and got me.
Wow.
And I was in the hospital, and so I'm in the hospital. My parents are notified, but I'm a grown man.
Right.
My estranged wife, they were all notified. He's in the hospital, tried to commit suicide, pumped his stomach, and I'm okay. They get all that out.
Right.
And fortunately, they got me help. The hospital staff, I remember they, came in, they were talking to me. I remember that. And so there was a level of stability that came to me. And so my father said, after the suicide attempt, oh, he just trying to get attention. I became so outraged
I'm sure
at what he said that, now you got to hear this. If I had a gun, I would have put it to my head and pulled the trigger. Because I already attempted it once.
Right.
And now all of this hurt and this trauma is coming back to this point in time where you attempt to take your life. you don't succeed, and then a family member says something so insensitive
Right.
that it outrages you to the point to now you want to commit a violent act
Yeah.
in taking your life.
Yeah. That's heavy.
So that gives you an insight to where you understand when people do things like Chesley Chris. And the whole story hasn't come out, and it may not come out, but I'm able to recognize it, because when you jump off of a 30-story building or a 9-story building, you can't come back from that.
That's right.
That's a violent act.
Yes.
Very violent. When you put a gun in your head and you pull the trigger, that's a violent act. When you hang yourself, that's a violent act. And what that's telling me,
you had to go through a mental process to figure that out.
To figure that out, to go
Carry
through
it through. Yeah.
Right. And so when you as an individual go through that, it can create in you what's called post-traumatic stress.
Yes.
So when, for example, when Don Cornelius, Soul Train, he killed himself.
Right.
I went through that process. I literally was grieving. Never met Don Cornelius, just watched the show.
Right.
When Robin Williams hung himself, went through it again.
Yeah.
Anthony Bourdain, I used to love his show. I can't watch his show to this very day.
Wow.
I used to watch his show all the time because he could travel the world, he could eat all this exotic food, and I just loved that show. I loved him, and the life he was living.
Yes.
And didn't know that he was going through some mental health issues.
Yes.
And then hung himself, went through it again. And so on January 30th, I'm waiting for being in LA, LA boy, that was the NFC Championship game for the Rams and the 49ers. And then I hear this information over the news that a young woman jumped to her death in New York City. And then come to find out, it's Chesley Chris, Miss USA. And immediately I went into this post-traumatic stress. It took me back to the point to where I made the attempt. Now you got a problem. Now you got a problem. You're not. So now it's like, oh wow. Now it's like, you don't want to do that. You're 40 years removed from your attempt.
Yes.
But you're back, you're right back. And you understand the mental process that you go through to do the act that could potentially end your life.
Wow.
And it gives you a different insight that people, even licensed therapists, can't figure it out.
Yes.
Because if you remember, her mother said that was not her first attempt. She attempted it before. But when she was reading her last text message, she didn't read the whole text message, because I believe that Chesley, she put the trauma that she went through that caused her to go through this high functioning depression. She put it in that last text message.
Wow.
But her mother is not going to expose her family to what Chesley went through and why she became depressed, severely depressed. There is a cause, and suicide is the effect. And you recognize that. So that was the awakening for me, January 30th, because now the news is coming out and they're flooding us with, the Miss USA, she's Miss USA, and now you're feeling some kind of way.
Right.
And now that forces you to have to deal with your trauma because you went through the same thing, although you didn't succeed. And there's a lot of people that didn't succeed. One of my favorite singers, Phyllis Hyman. I'm like, oh, you see, and so you hold these people who did what you did but didn't survive it. But your goal is number one, how do I get better?
Right.
How do I deal with my I say mental health care?
Yeah.
And how can I help others?
Right.
And the
Absolutely.
only way you can do that is you have to be able to articulate it and then share it with the world.
And you
And
have to
so,
be able to, I thank God for you right now. Let me pause you. You have to be able to own that. And
correct.
you owned it. You identified it. You not
Right.
only owned it and identified it, you embraced it because this is real. This is happening to me.
Right.
And
It's
then
happening today.
yes, you
And,
relived it. You
right.
relived it.
And this is 40 years after the fact. So post-traumatic stress, severe depression,
Yes.
and it can be chemical, changes in your brain. Circumstances can trigger it, but your goal is to be healthy mentally, and so you have to deal with it. So that was the final event that that motivated me to have to face it straight
Yes.
on, not to ignore it, even though I have been talking to my daughter. She doesn't understand, very smart, and it's like, okay, and I call it self-care.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to be able to self-diagnose. And when we talk about high functioning depression, I'm a high functioning depressive type of
Yeah,
individual.
'cause you don't look like what you've been through, my brother.
Well, okay, but think about it. And we use our references.
Yes.
You look at Chesley, what did you see in her? You saw a smiling face.
That's right.
You saw a bubbly person,
Yes.
always woo, woo, woo,
Yes.
beauty queen. You saw all of that,
Yes.
and it all was a front
Yes.
to what was really going on in her
Yes.
mind and in her heart. She was hurting. Now so the last post that I did is like an emotional self help kit for depression.
Okay.
So the question is, what were my coping mechanisms?
Okay.
Because I went through what I went through, and this is why I mentioned Don Cornelius, because as a little kid, my sister can dance, and I was right on her hip. And we would be on Saturday, we would be watching Soul Train, and we would be practicing those dances. And because she was good, I got good, and we could dance. And so we had a little slab at the house, and we had skates, and we would be skating around a little concrete slab around the house, and we would do that. So as I got older, I became an OG roller. And I never been a gangster, but I was an original,
Right.
and I can do it. And I would do it to a level unlike anybody else because I can rock.
Yeah.
And people like to see me roll. And I had them moves of cold blood, just I was cold blooded, but there was a whole lot of other cold blooded guys out there too. And it was like we was battling on them skates who had the coldest moves, and my moves were cold, their moves was cold, and we got popular. We were very popular, individual skaters. And so, and at that time I was married. My wife, she didn't skate. She was older than me, but she didn't have a problem with me skating because when I would come home, I would always be happy. Because what I realized is because I did it with everything that was in me and I did it well, it released those endorphins that gave me a sense of well-being. In the midst of chaos, because I'm sweating. I got my skate rag, and I'm out there and I'm doing my thing for at least for 2 or 3 hours, and that was my hobby. And so when I came to Texas, I kind of grew out of the skating thing, but then I started swinging out. And I don't know if you don't know about me, and I'm the quiet one. So if you heard about Jerry Palmer, the king of swing, we learned how to swing out at the same time.
Yes, indeed.
Steppers. They done made a career out of it. I didn't.
Uh-huh.
But I'm legendary in the swing out world
Uh-huh.
and the stepping world because of that same thing, because it brought me to a place to where, now I'm single. I'm single. You never
Right.
know me to be connected with anybody.
Right.
And
Right.
that's because of my Christian upbringing. I'm
Right.
like, okay, I can get with you, but guess what? I'm not going to drink the milk before I buy the cow. So I'm not going to do the boyfriend and girlfriend thing. I ain't going to try it out. I ain't going to do none of that. Well, that doesn't play well with a lot of women, because you can follow the Steve Harvey rule, the 90-day rule. But guess what? I'm not the 90-day rule guy. I'm not
All
trying
right.
to get with you.
Say
I'm
that
not trying
again.
to get with
Say
you.
that again for the good folks out there.
I'm not the 90-day rule guy, because I would tell these women, I want to get married.
Right.
And I would put a time frame on that. I said, I can wait in dealing with you for up to a year and a half. Now we can get married before then, but I want to get to know you. But until then, I ain't sleeping with you.
Amen.
And that was my thing.
Right.
So I was popular with a couple of the women that we got to the point to where I really like them, they really like me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, she's the one. I'm ready to marry her. But now she wants to sleep with me after the 90 days.
Right.
And I'm like, no, we can do that on the wedding night.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And twice, boom, it fell apart.
Wow.
And I said, okay, so I didn't create any soul ties with that person. Loved her to death. Both of them, loved both of them. Loved them. And those were the only two times since I got divorced in 93 that, I went down that.
Right.
And to this very day, I still hold to that principle. And folks said, oh, he must be gay or he must be this.
Yeah,
No,
I remember you shared
me.
it. Yeah, you shared it.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, at my age now, that's just a way of life for me.
Yes,
I mean, so if you want to talk about, if you say I look good, you know how I dress.
Yes.
I work clean. I'm clean all the time, even when I'm cutting hair. But the people who know me, I think my reputation is pretty good. They never put me with anybody, but that's because of a moral code that I personally follow. Not the 90-day rule. Now you got to fit into that and say, if you like me, then we gonna get together and we gonna do the things that we need to do to where we can have a solid marriage.
Right.
So but that ain't gonna be it. We could get married in 6 months.
Right. Right.
If you like me well enough, but it ain't gonna have anything to do with, with us sleeping together ahead of time. So that was that. So, but dealing with the ongoing depression of being lonely. You remember she said that?
Yes.
Because of the loneliness. She was alone. We understand that.
Yeah.
What is your coping mechanism because of the loneliness? There is something that you have to do that you love that will help you cope with those periods of loneliness, because that's when the depression sits in. And once you do it once you commit in your mind that I'm in my life, that doesn't leave you. And you play with the thought, even though you don't do it. And so the other coping mechanism is, and I think I may have told you this, I always fast around this time of the year. And I would fast for 40 days. And it just happened to coincide. Now, I'm a Christian, but it would coincide with Ramadan.
Right.
So, and I had a lot of friends who are Muslim. And so we kind of had that in common, but they would fast for 30 days. I would start 10 days before them because Jesus fasted for 40 days.
Right.
And so that was a form of discipline for me, to where I would control my flesh and not eat anything or put anything in my mouth from sun up to sundown. So those were my coping mechanisms to deal with my depression. And so I would encourage people, if they're going through that, that develop, your survival kit or your emotional kit, and to deal with the depression that you're going through. Because when you get to the point to where you say, I don't want to go on any further, you have to have something in place that can dispel that thought.
Amen.
And so, and typically it's something that you enjoy doing. And so now, being a preacher, I put out things that's encouraging every day. And I have an issue, just like I can do daily studies in the scriptures, the video version. I've done that before, but I'm going off of I call those sermonettes. And I'm kind of following that script, and it's usually about 3 minutes, 3 or 4 minutes, and I try to keep it short. So if people wanted to tune in, they could tune in on that.
Right.
But every day you're getting something positive from me. Well, that's a coping mechanism as well, because I have to study to prepare those.
Yes.
But now this form is good because this is an interchange. I'm telling you my story naturally,
right?
And and I could put an emphasis on it, and so forth and so on.
And people not only can hear you, but they can see you. And
right.
The scripture says people are won by the blood of the Lamb, Jesus, and the word of our testimonies. And they won't know unless we tell them.
Unless we tell them. So I say that there's hope. And the thing is, and then I'm sad, and at the same time, I understand our God. I know He's a loving God. I know individuals have made decisions that have ended their life. And even in all of that, I trust God.
Amen.
I trust Him. I don't judge it, because how we come up, well, is that the unforgivable sin? I throw that thought out the window, because that's not in my authority of purview to where I could even say anything about that. Right. Other than I trust God. But because we do have a moral code, I don't want to do anything that is going to be against Him or that He doesn't approve. So what do? If you see this, if you notice, every time, if you look at my posts, what do you see? You see 2 parts, right? Well, what that represents is my ministry, Merging Hearts.
Right.
And that's the name, Merging Hearts Ministries. And so it's about showing love to people. Yes. It's about reaching out to them in the area of their hurt.
That's right.
And being able to effectively minister to them. And when they know that you have a shared experience and they're listening to it, well, they can develop those survival skills, because
themselves, right?
What was that song by CeCe Winans? You are loved. You are absolutely loved.
Amen.
So
Amen.
That's a message that that I know that God has given me to preach and to put out there. But then have a demonstration of it. What do we talk about? John chapter 13, 34 and 35.
Right.
A new commandment I give you, that you love one another, even as I have loved you, that you also love one another. And by this, all men will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another.
That's like that. That's it. That's it.
So when you are working in your purpose, see, I can be depressed, but I can live with the depression.
Amen.
Now it's my call to share my story with other individuals and reach out. See, because we have a connection.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
we worshiped at the same place. We're friends. You know me and I know you. You
Right.
can vouch for me, I vouch for you because
Right.
we know each other
Right.
and because of where we came from. And
Wow.
so, you know, and I, you know, and that had to, you know, that message had to get out, and I'm glad you invited me to share it, because in sharing it is therapeutic,
That is correct.
and people can hear
I see the freedom
it.
halo going over your head. More freedom halo.
And that's what we do. So listen.
No, you
Preachers,
listen. No, you
people go
listen.
through
You
it. They
listen.
go through it. You see, people think that preachers got it all together. No, they may seem like they got it all together. They don't have it all together. But the only way they could overcome their issues is they got to share their testimony.
That's right. They got to be real. You have
They
to be
have to be
transparent.
real. Exactly.
Transparency is the way to go. And I want to
That's the way to go.
thank you 100 times over for your boldness and your humility, because it takes humility to share what you just shared about yourself. So thank you for doing that. And I guess what I do want to say is give the good folks one one last, what advice would you say to the good folks out there that may be experiencing depression and don't know what it is? You just described it through your story, the things that you were feeling. So give them one little advice before we sign off, because we just keep it real. Your time.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to have, and I'm gonna just call it, you have to have a survival kit.
Okay.
A survival kit. You and a lot of times we think is, well, brother, you just need to pray. That's not what I needed, because I was praying anyway and I was feeling horrible.
Right.
And I would always continue to pray. But I needed to do something else that I enjoyed doing.
Mm,
And because of that, that became part of my emotional survival kit.
gotcha.
I would go skating, I would go dancing, because those were physical things. It could be, it's something like what you do every day. You go to the gym. It's the same effect, because now you're working out, you're
Right. That's
sweating.
my peace
It,
time.
right, that you see, that's your peace time, and it releases those endorphins, and I call them the well-being endorphins, because you're taking care of your body. Now you feel good. And don't let people get into your ear. You do have to have your core individuals, your go-to people. Like my daughter is my go-to person, but I have to limit that only because she doesn't fully understand everything, because
Right.
she has her own baggage. But to pick out those individuals that you know you can talk to and just say, hey, feeling a certain kind of way,
Sure.
wanted to talk to you real quick, and they would say something encouraging. We all have celebrities that we like, that they're constantly putting out positive stuff, because I listen to Steve Harvey. He's
Right.
funny, but by and large, the advice that he gives is good and it's encouraging. There's other individuals as well. So I tune into that. And so I have these things set up that I can go to when I'm not out having fun, but I need to be encouraged.
Yes. Yes.
So I limit toxicity. I don't entertain that. I just entertain the positive, the encouraging, and the upbuilding. So
Gotcha.
that's the advice that I would give individuals. And if there's anybody out there that need help with that, what you have to do, that, I mean, they can reach out to me on Facebook.
I'm going to leave
My
your information at the end of this
okay.
clip. I'll make sure I get the information at the end of this clip. And if anybody would like to reach out to Tim and get some more advice, use his ear, his experience, and use the grace of God inside of him, you're welcome to do that. I will leave the information. But this is DTM Real Talk, and we're just doing what? Keeping it
real.
Thanks for watching DTM Real Talk. Be sure to join us for more conversation. And oh yeah, don't forget to hit that like button, share, and subscribe while you're there.